Hi, hello, my name is Emma. I talk about craft-related drama on this channel, and today I have got a story for you. So there's something about the world of crafting and maybe the people in it that breeds drama. It feels like it's happening more and more with the rise of TikTok and like commentary YouTube. But this drama has been around forever. It seems like it's kind of just a part of human nature. This one user on Reddit says it well. They say, "Yarn drama is fucking extra, lol. Something about the mashup of cranky old biddies and hip young libs brings out all kinds of crazy." And while there's no shortage of drama in the present day to talk about, today we're going to take a little trip back through knitting drama history to follow the story of a woman named Danielle and her yarn dyeing business, Mystical Creation Yarns. Before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to Carrie Craft Geek for putting together a really comprehensive video on this story about 2 years ago. Her video will be linked below, and I definitely recommend you check it out if you want more of this story, although I'll probably cover most of the stuff she covers in hers and more. This was a really great starting point for research and for the timeline. And a huge thank you to Goblin Garments, my research assistant, for helping pull together all of the additional research on this one. And of course, a big thank you to the knitters of 15 years ago for documenting this saga so thoroughly and so publicly online. We couldn't have done this without you. Now that we have all of that out of the way, let's begin our journey through the wild tale of Danielle Glunt and Mystical Creation Yarns, or MCY for short, because there is no way I'm going to be saying all of that every single time. Hello, welcome to Knitting Drama History class. Today we'll be talking about MCY and Danielle and many other characters that I will soon introduce you to. I had originally wanted to do like a Mike's Mike style timeline with characters and have red yarn connecting everyone everywhere, but I just couldn't really conceptualize how I wanted it to look. So instead, since I already have this set up, I'm just gonna put some like important information up on whatever we're talking about. So I'll probably have whatever year I'm speaking about, and then either like a little heading or some of the main characters to be thinking about, and or like what's going on at any given point in time. The story begins all the way back in 2003 when MCY first posted their website. The initial welcome post introduced MCY as a small family company in New Mexico that had been specializing in hand dyeing / painting fibers for over 10 years. Now, I couldn't figure out where they were doing this business beforehand, like if they were doing in-person vending or if they were just sort of hand painting stuff for their own use. But they say 10 years in this post to kind of give them some credibility that like they have experience doing this. The post mentions that they also do special orders for yarn at no extra cost. They also promise several commitments. They use natural fibers that are hand painted and hand dyed. The dyes are mostly natural, but some do contain chemicals. And then they say if you're ever dissatisfied with your order, you should reach out to them right away. They say you should allow 2 weeks for your order to ship, but in some cases it may take as long as 3 weeks if they have to order the yarn before dyeing. This is then signed off from Joy and Danielle. The email address listed also has both of their names in it. Joy-Danielle at mysticalcreationyarns.com. So right off the bat, there's nothing too concerning about this. These seem like fairly normal small business policies where they're like, okay, we're gonna try and get you your order as fast as we can, but there might be some cases where it's slightly delayed because we're a small business. And it sounds like the way that they source their yarn, they do it sometimes per order. So they get an order, then they buy the undyed yarn, and then they bring it. So for those unfamiliar with hand-dyed yarn, hand-painted, what all of that means, as far as I understand, they are taking yarn that is white, has no color on it, and then they put it in like a dye bath, and then they add extra color to it. Here's some pictures of their yarn for reference. This website was a very early 2000s bare bones website. A very interesting thing to note about their website at this point is that there was no shopping cart or checkout option for customers. Instead, they would order by email and pay either via PayPal, check, or money order. They also note if paying by personal check, the check will be held for 7 days until cleared. Processing your order will not begin until your personal check has cleared. So that's adding some more time onto this already potentially lengthy process, but more on that later. While in our 2023 brains, this might set off alarm bells and raise red flags of something fishy right away, keep in mind that this was 20 years ago, Amazon Prime had yet to launch, and while PayPal had been around for 5 years at this point, e-commerce was still in the very early stages of development. Web design also did not have the accessibilities and capabilities that it does today with our modern ability to build sites with relative ease in just moments. So in August 2003, we see the first update to the website. There's now a $100 minimum order required, and the option for custom orders was removed. Over the course of the next 2 years, they slowly updated and improved the website. In addition to this site, MCY had an eBay and an Etsy store. They made 3,179 sales on Etsy alone and were rated as a power seller on eBay with 100% positive feedback. And this number, 2,108, is either the number of reviews or their ranking number. I don't really know much about eBay and I couldn't quite figure it out. But either way, they had really positive feedback at this point and everything was going super well.
Okay, I did click around a little bit more and I found out that the feedback score is the number of satisfied customers. So anyone who left a negative review would be subtracted from the overall number of reviews. And then this number that's left is the feedback score. So pretty good. They have over 2,000 satisfied customers who have left reviews.
Throughout this time, MCY had established themselves as a favorite among knitters due to their vibrant color options, high quality yarn, and low price point. The price ranged depending on the yarn base, but many of their options were below the $20 mark, which for context is pretty good. The business also gained popularity in tandem with a shawl pattern called the Clapetus by Kate Gilbert. If you know anything about the sort of older generations of knitters, and especially the Ravelry crowd, shawls are a huge thing. And when one pattern gets popular, everybody sort of hops on the trend and wants to make it. And this was the hot shawl of the moment. And I only bring this up because it will come up later on in the story. So just hold that in your brain. The first ever mention of MCY in a blog post was by Maggie Stitches on TypePad on October 19th, 2004. She says that she found the store as an eBay vendor and was impressed by their variety of yarn and colors. Now, before we go any further, I want to introduce 2 websites that will play a large role in the story. The first is Ravelry. Ravelry is a website that functions as a sort of social media for fiber artists of all kinds with options to create digital journals of your projects and yarn, store and plan patterns that you've followed or plan to follow, and most importantly for this story, engage in forum posting on boards divided by topic. Ravelry has consistently had bad user interface and has been met with its own complaints about pervasive accessibility problems, a redesign that caused some users to experience seizures, and controversial removal of conservative patterns and message boards. But we'll save all that for another video. The next is LiveJournal. LiveJournal is a social networking service where users can keep a blog, journal, or diary. I'm personally not very familiar with this site, and according to its Wikipedia page, it has its own share of controversies, but most relevant to this story are its features. The site allowed users to create journal entries, each of which had its own web page that includes comments by other users. Back to MCY. In October of 2005, they announced that they would temporarily no longer be accepting orders. In April of 2006, one user posted to LiveJournal asking if anyone had heard anything about the temporary closure and if anyone had any insight into when they might reopen. According to a commenter, MCY had taken the website down after receiving a huge yarn order from a co-op, which is a group of fiber artists who organize and purchase their yarn together in order to receive discounts. The commenter had been a part of the co-op, and they said it had taken them 3 months to receive their yarn, which apparently was not too out of the ordinary when doing these co-ops. In the same thread, other commenters dissuade the original poster from purchasing from MCY anyway because of a combination of their slow shipping times, yarn sent without proper identifying labels, and yarn dyes that bleed when washed. In August of 2006, Danielle went on a popular knitting podcast at the time called Lime and Violet. Miss Violet and Miss Lime, as they called themselves, were Midwestern knitters from Omaha, Nebraska in their early 30s. Miss Violet's real name is Eliza, and she has come out and done some interviews about the podcast, but Miss Lime has stayed anonymous. Both of these characters will pop up later on as well. According to a 2009 interview with Fame Foundry, at the time of their podcast launch, there were only 2 other knitting-specific podcasts, making them the third. Their podcast was met with massive success, and within 3 months, they had reached 5,000 listeners. Their first episode was from June 2006, and by the time Danielle was on in August of that same year, they had reached around that 5,000 listener mark. Though I can't find any way to see the direct impact of the podcast on sales, more people online were talking about MCY, And by early 2007, there were many rave reviews on knittinghelp.com. And now we move on to 2007, where things really start to heat up if you can't tell by the board behind me. So as the positive reviews were coming in, there also continued to be murmurings of complaints. People complained about an abundance of knots in their skeins and skeins showing up felted. If you don't knit, you don't want knots in your yarn because that can affect the finished piece that you're making. So if you're working with like a ball of yarn and then all of a sudden there's a knot, it's gonna show in your piece. So that's bad. And then felting means that the fibers all like graft together basically, and it can make the yarn just completely unworkable. And neither of those things should be happening in any yarn you buy. One LiveJournal poster says that they ordered their yarn on January 31st, 2007. They were told that the yarn would ship on February 12th, but by February 18th, they had still not received their order. They said, "My last shipment from them only took 3 days to reach me, so I'm annoyed. Is anyone else having problems? Thanks." On February 22nd, the same poster made an update post after receiving their package. Their main gripe had to do with the yarn being the wrong weight, meaning that it was not the correct size for the project that they had in mind. The colors were not the same in the photos as in person, which can happen sometimes, but they said some of the yarns were true to color and some of them were like super washed out. So it wasn't just a case of the photography being a little bit off. And they said that the color looked like it would run when washed. If you don't know what this looks like, don't worry, we will see more of this later on. They also mentioned in this post that a 300-yard skein was $4.25. This is shockingly low and lower than I had seen anywhere else on their website for their like normally priced yarns. I'm not sure if they were just having like a massive sale at this point or something like that. But like I said, this does seem to be on the low end. Most of their yarns ranged between like $10 and $20 a skein, but unfortunately not all of the links on their website still like are archived, so I can't go back and see the price for all of them. I don't know if that was the regular price or a sale price, but to me, that just seems like strangely low. In March 2007, MCY posts to Etsy with a statement. Important notice. Hello, Mystical Creation yarn customers. We have succeeded in expanding our yarn family and are currently training the new people. We anticipate to be running back on schedule by mid-March. Until then, we ask you to keep the following in mind. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday. Any emails or purchases will be responded to first thing Monday morning. Shipping will take up to 7 days to send out from warehouse. USPS priority shipping is 3 to 5 days. We are very excited about the growth and thank all of you for helping to make this business a success. Thank you for all being understanding and barring with us during our business growth. MCY. Hello, yarn family. Welcome to our wonderful array of beautiful creations. If you don't see what you're looking for, please feel free to email us anytime at mcy@mysticalcreationyarns.com. Later that month, on March 26th, 2007, Deborah, who hosted the blog Cashmere Dreams on a Kitchen Cotton Budget, posts saying that the yarn she ordered is nice, but it's nothing like the colors that she thought she would be getting. Above is wool/silk from Mystical Creations yarn. The yarn is a pleasantly rustic, thick/thin, shiny, glossy mass. It's described as bulky, although the thin portions have pushed me towards a number 8 needle. The cherry gloss colorway above is truly different than MCY's website. It's well worth the price, although here's fair warning. Take heed when ordering from these folks. From this experience, I can attest that the photos on their site are stock and do not reflect their currently dyed skeins. I'm really happy with the colors. It's not what I expected, but quite pretty. Tiger and raspberry jam, ? So even at this point in early 2007, we're getting some rumblings of something being a little bit off. So with hand-dyed yarns, it is expected that sometimes what you see in the pictures is not exactly what you're going to get, because if they're doing small batches, the dye lots may be different. And the way you can think about this is if they are doing an order of one color, let's say they're doing a red, and they mix up the dye, they do the red, they dye the yarn, and then they send it out. The next time they dye red, theoretically they should have taken note about the proportions of water and dye and yarn that they used, but even so, it will likely be a slightly different color at the end. That's sort of expected. That's a big thing with yarn, even in like big commercial production warehouses, where you are supposed to buy the right amount for your whole project at the beginning, because usually you're not going to end up with exactly the same colors, but they should be pretty similar shades, and especially if you have a photo on the website and then what you send the people is completely different, that's like not really cool. And guess what Deborah is making? another calapatus. On April 10th, Deborah posts a finished photo of her calapatus. She says, "Finally a picture of the finished raspberry tiger calapatus. This was knit between March 23rd and March 31st. I won't go into detail as nearly all of you have already knit one. If I were to do it over again, I would choose a DK weight yarn. Let's just say it's pleasantly bulky, ... a lovely winter scarf." So at this point, she's pretty happy with her finished shawl. She says that she would have made some changes in the yarn choices that she made, but according to all of the information she had on hand, she chose that weight of yarn from MCY. This was not their fault. She's just saying, you know, I knit this, I kind of would rather have done it with a lighter weight yarn, but this is fine. At 2:32 p.m. the next day, Deborah posts a photo of her calapatus mid-wash in the bathtub. She says, "I decided to give old Raspberry Tiger a wash. By the time its 20-minute soak was over, the water looked like it housed something terribly disturbing. A dead poodle, a severed limb. You get the horrific idea. The water never ran clear. Raspberry Tiger is resting on a burgundy sheet. I'm afraid to find out how albino its state is tonight. Bad, Mystical Creations yarns. Bad." I don't mean to be dramatic, but when I saw the photo of the bloodbath for the first time, I literally could not believe my eyes. You can kind of expect a yarn to lose some dye in the water when it's rinsed out, especially with like a red, but this is not normal. She says the water never ran clear, and this is quite literally a bloodbath. The problem with this, especially with a wearable piece, is that if you were to wear that shawl and then sweat even a little bit, it's gonna stain everything that you're wearing red. There's also something about the framing of this photo with her dog's head like looking on in horror that is just like incredibly funny to me. Despite this haunting image, Deborah comes back on her blog a week later to update everyone that the shawl has survived the bloodbath and the yarn is actually behaving exactly how it's supposed to be. The drape is lovely, the stitches have evened out nicely, and the softness of the yarn has improved. She doesn't seem to be too concerned. Just days later, on April 13th, 2007, MCY announces that they have officially closed their Etsy store. This is what they had to say. "Good evening, yarn family. We have decided to close the Etsy store. We just are not large enough to keep up with all of the sales. We do appreciate all of the support and business brought by each and every one of you. We hope that you all will understand that we will be able to give better quality and service with this decision. You can still find us at our eBay store and on the website. If you have any questions, feel free to email me anytime. Have a wonderful weekend, Danielle." I found this email via LiveJournal. I'm not sure where the original message came from. I don't know if it was a mass email or a post on Etsy. It sort of looks like the structure of an email, but I don't know. It's hard to say. This is not super relevant, but this is what their store page looked like after closing. I just think it's kind of funny that this is what the like default display screen looked like after an Etsy shop closed. I think they should keep doing this. It's more fun than just having it like be blank. After the store closure, many online breathed a sigh of relief about not having to worry about MCY's terrible quality yarn anymore. But of course, the story does not stop here. On April 30th, 2007, just weeks after this big dramatic moment, we get another post from LiveJournal user Sus7. A new seller has appeared on Etsy under the name Art Fibers, whose yarn looks suspiciously like MCY. Not only is this the same yarn, but they're using the same pictures and the same yarn color names. This user had bought a yarn in the colorway Latte, and on this Art Fibers account, there was another yarn listed with the same photos, and the color was named Latte. This seller claimed to be in France, and their name was Claudine. In a now deleted newsletter, Danielle had mentioned that one of their new employees, a European distributor, was named Claudine. The Art Fibers Etsy account only made 2 sales. I'm not sure how many they made on eBay. And that was sort of the end of that. They shut that down pretty quickly. If you've been thinking, it's been a few weeks since we've heard from Danielle or anyone from MCY, wonder what they're up to. Don't worry, because on May 1st, 2007, we get a post from Danielle on her blog called Speaking Out. Let me just read it all and then we can break it down. "Good morning, yarn family. Some things have been brought to our attention from a very good friend. I would like to share my feelings on these subjects. There has been some bad business ethics and practices going on. Very unladylike, to say the least. More soap opera than anything. But I do feel a need to say how I feel. These are our competitors trying to compete with us with bad business practices. They are getting their friends to do the dirty work. Instead of spending time making a better product and services, they would rather take the low road and spend time attacking us. I find it quite funny, to say the least. The ideas they come up with are so far from the truth. They actually think that it is damaging our business, but in turn has made our company bigger because everybody wants to see what the hype is all about. How these people have the time is beyond me. The people that are letting this go on and contributing, I don't think very high of them either and their business practices. Why can't we all just get along with peace, love, and happiness? There is enough room for all of us. We are working 24 hours a day making the best product and giving the best service possible. Our shipping has been very slow over the last few months because of the overload in sales that we have had. I would like to make this all up to you. We would like to offer free shipping on your next order of over $25 for the next 2 weeks only. Offer will end on May 15th, 2007. We hope this will make it up to you in some way. Please understand that one person cannot ship 300 to 400 packages in one day. She can only go so fast. We have chosen not to hire more help in this area so we can keep the prices down and you all can enjoy great yarn without getting ripped off. So please bear with us. If any of you would like to email me regarding any of this, I would be more than happy to reply with the truth. I would also like to mention that whoever is washing or soaking our wool silk yarn, please don't. We say to hand wash. That means spot treatment. I do not know anyone who soaks silk. That has always been a dry clean only fiber. Also, you need to be very careful when washing wool as it will felt. When blocking your items, please spray bottle the item, do not soak. I hope that you all understand why I have taken the time to write to all of you. We appreciate all of you and your continued support. You all have made Mystical Creation Yarns the beauty that it is today, and I promise as the owner to keep giving you the best prices on the best products as possible. Have a beautiful week, Danielle. Posted by Mystical Creation Yarns Elegant, Passionate, Inspiring Yarns at 6:47 a.m. Sorry, I don't know why that's so funny to me that this was posted at 6 a.m., but there's that. If you watched this unfold live, please tell me what your reaction was when you read this post. Where were you when Danielle Glunt decided to speak out? So in this lengthy statement, she never mentions who is allegedly trying to compete with her. I personally have no idea who she could be talking about, and she never specifies who the people attacking her are or what they're criticizing. Both me and my researcher don't really know what she could be talking about here, and we've been reading through like every possible available relevant post for days, so if you know anything more about this, then please let us know. Additionally, she mentions having shipping delays due to an influx of orders, like 300 to 400 orders a day. Instead of closing orders and attempting to work through the backlog, instead they offer a discount with free shipping, which presumably will only result in more orders and continue to back them up. This also only screws over the people who are waiting for their yarn orders even more, because now, not only do they have to wait for their order, but they also had to pay for shipping, and all of a sudden now she's offering a free shipping option. She also says that they've chosen not to hire any help in order to keep the prices low, but at this point, they are clearly drowning and they need the help. There's a point in any small business's life where they meet a crossroads and they have to decide to hire an employee or two, even if they'll see a cut in revenue initially, because once a business reaches a certain point, there is physically no way for a person to do anything, and I think this is a perfect example of that. She even says this, only one person can't ship 300 orders a day. Maybe 2 people couldn't either, but hiring even just one other person would theoretically double the amount of orders that she's able to get out per day and thus help them get through the backlog a little bit faster. Even if it was just like a temporary contractor while they got caught up, if they are making 300 sales a day, let's just say on the low end, each person is ordering one $10 skein of yarn. That's $3,000 a day. Surely somewhere in your budget, you can use some of that revenue to hire a part-time employee. But I'm no businessman, and clearly she chose a different route, so let's just see what happens next. Her comment about the silk and spot cleaning seems to be in direct reference to Deborah and the cherry glaze bloodbath incident, but the tags of the yarn said that the yarn was hand wash, which means usually that you can wash it by hand. If it actually is only supposed to be spot treated, then the tag needs to say that. It needs to say spot treatment only, because that's not a normal thing with yarn. Also, if you're dyeing yarn that's going to be used for a garment, and then telling people they can't wash it because the dye is gonna bleed, I think you might just need to find another dye option. I will not claim to be an expert on yarn dyeing. I don't dye yarn really. The only thing I use is like super easy, like all-purpose dye. I don't use acid dyes. But surely, even in 2007, 2008, there were yarns or yarn methods that would not result in yarn bleeding like this, because everybody's freaking out about it. Like, this is not normal. She did receive some negative comments in response to her speaking out post because, like, duh, of course she did. Here are a few of them. Hand washing and spot treatment aren't the same thing. If you mean spot treatment, don't label your yarn hand wash. I'm sorry, but you really shouldn't be trying to cover your ass at this point. Everyone has seen your rude and nasty emails, retaliatory feedback. Very bad business. Maybe you should spend less time selling and more time trying to make a decent product so you won't have to pad your feedback and open new shops. Just saying. For all you know, I'm a customer who got burned by this company that clearly has no regard for anything other than selling their stuff. If you want to know more, then Google MCY or Mystical Creations yarn. Or better yet, check Etsy for all the retaliatory feedback left by this company. I am just trying to save people from going through that kind of nonsense no matter what it cost. Business is business, and you can't justify poor practices with how little the price is. Fortunately, there's no way for us to go back and see the Etsy reviews, but God, I wish we could see them. I wish we could see what people were saying and what she was saying in response, because it sounds like it wasn't good. In the following months, it appears that MCY continued to sell yarn and continued to receive negative complaints about how the shop still had many listings available, even though apparently they were super backlogged on orders. One poster says, "You'd think that if you couldn't handle a lot of business, you would just list what you could handle and add more listings when you had more time." Not them. They also got complaints about bad customer service. Mystical Creations has the worst customer service ever. They don't respond to emails, they have no phone number to contact, and their turnaround time after ordering just sucks. Their yarns do not look like they appear on the site, and if you email them to ask questions before purchase, if you get a reply, it's curt and rude. Never again. Another person who had obviously not been keeping up with this saga posted in a Ravelry board with similar shipping and refund complaints, and commenters responded saying, "I've heard a few rumors about MCY. In my opinion, even if it was only $50, you should try and get that money back. $50 times whatever number of people placed orders with them and got ripped off equals a lot of free cash to whoever is behind MCY. I would submit a dispute with PayPal and not back down." Another says, "I have heard, read online, a few iffy things about MCY. I think their working with you was absolutely ridiculous, and yes, you should file ASAP. File a complaint. They stole $50 from you. Contact Etsy and contact your bank or credit card company as well to try and deal with the money situation from that end. Let them know that you never received the goods promised and that it was a fraudulent sale." Throughout the end of 2007 and going into 2008, MCY yarns kept appearing under a few new names, again using the same photos and the same colorway names. Which, if you're trying to sell stock and everybody is already suspicious of you and already leaving all these negative reviews, why wouldn't you just at least take a few new photos and, rebrand the names a little bit so that you're slightly removed? But, not MCY. As 2008 rolls around, it's a new year, but the same old Danielle, and there continues to be a barrage of posts with similar complaints. Things got so crazy, we had to move locations. I have the year up here. Now we are in 2008, but I'm gonna leave the rest of these note cards on the table and just put them up as it becomes time to talk about them because I don't want to give you any spoilers. So we're in 2008. This is where things start to get really crazy. Notably, another yarn bleeding post, this time from Sea Hag Mary. She writes that she had finished knitting a wrap with a variety of yarns, two of which are from, of course, MCY. Now she posts a picture of it and says that she wants to block it, which is basically the process of getting the fiber wet and then putting it into the shape that you want it to be in, and it just relaxes the stitches, keeps everything nice and flat, especially for a shawl wrap type thing. You definitely want to block it. But she is concerned about the MCY yarn running into especially the yellow squares. And because she had seen talk on Ravelry of the MCY yarns bleeding, she decided to do a wash test of the two colors, one red and one green, that she used in her piece. And these are the results. Another horrifying photo for you. People responded suggesting washing with vinegar or unraveling the whole project, washing the yarns, and then reknitting it, which I'm sorry, but I would simply never do that. Over the course of the next few months, there were hundreds of similar complaints. Another one I want to highlight is this user's experience receiving a completely different product than what they ordered. So this was posted February 3rd, 2008, and the poster mentions ordering the yarn in December, despite having heard some negative reviews. The yarn finally arrived at the beginning of February. This is the photo from the MCY website of the yarn they purchased. And this is the yarn they received. Is that the craziest thing you've ever seen? I mean, one is shades of purple and green and the other is navy blue and white. Let me not even address the fact that they are completely different types of yarn. I haven't weighed them yet, so I have no idea how that will stack up. I actually did receive 2 email responses from Danielle in a very timely manner when I inquired about the shipping time on my yarn, so I can't complain about the communication. Yet. I guess I'll give her a week or so to make it right and then go from there. I don't think you need to be an expert in knitting or yarn to look at those photos and know that something is off. That being said, the more you know about yarn, the funnier it is, because not only are the colors obviously different, like there's no arguing that they're just like different on the screen or something like that. They look like they will be completely different amounts of yarn, which already affects like what kind of project you might be able to make with it. And on top of that, they are different weight yarns. So this is basically like the thickness of each strand is just different, and they're different materials. The yarn that this person ordered looks like a wool silk blend, like the one that bled so horrendously before. And the yarn received looks like some kind of alpaca or mohair. I'm not 100% sure just from the picture, but that would be my guess. So moving on from the complaints, because I feel like we have strongly established that already, on Monday, January 14th, 2008, the notorious, the infamous Ravelry board begins. The board has 566 pages. Each page has 25 comments talking about the situation. I've been going through this myself, and my research assistant has been going through this, and I feel like there's still more that we didn't pull out. I'll make sure to link this if you're interested. You just need a Ravelry account to look at it. I am going to include some screenshots from the thread, but I'll crop out a lot of the names and photos of the posters unless it is directly relevant to the story moving forward. So now that the board was started, this was a place for all of the negative experiences to collect in one place, and people began to grow more and more fed up. Side note, at this point, I have no idea why anybody was still ordering from her. All the bad comments and the problems with the yarn and Danielle kind of being a bit of a menace. The only thing I can think of is that the yarn was just a really good price and enough people had good experiences with it that people wanted to risk it, I guess. So by January 30th, 2008, their website had disappeared, but their eBay was still there, even though it had nothing listed for sale. People speculated that she had popped up as another seller, Yarntopia Treasures. And this is where we start to see a little bit more behind the curtain in Danielle's life as a business owner. The real owner of Yarntopia Treasures was actually not Danielle, but it was one of Danielle's former employees. Since they were both based in New Mexico, and because the owner of Yarntopia Treasures, Tammy, had had a past association with Danielle, people began blindly accusing her of being MCY in disguise. It's possible that this is the yarn store that Danielle was talking about in her Speaking Out post from 2007, but that's kind of just complete speculation. So people began emailing Yarntopia Treasures and referencing the Ravelry boards, and on February 8th, someone posted an email response that she had sent to them. So this is Yarntopia Treasures. I'm still trying to recover from what was presented to me yesterday and by some of my customers regarding the message boards on Ravelry. I don't know if that is what you are referencing or not. My loyal customers that know who I am are astonished as I am. Yes, I know her. I've never denied that, and no, I am not affiliated with her. Look at Enchanting Design Yarns on eBay. She lives 3 miles from me. Why has she not ever asked these questions? I feel like my feedback and solid customer base, plus the fact that I've had this eBay account since 2003 and have a store on Etsy, should be enough to support the facts, but I'm still being accused of association. I would love to have you as a customer, but I don't want people buying my yarns to quote-unquote test them, etc. That has already been done when I opened my store, and I passed. I love what I do, I keep it small. When I'm busy, you will only see a few auctions. When I am caught up, I will list more. I don't feel that after paying a designer off Etsy called Mammo Planet to design my store that I should have to redo it just because it has some similarities. I appreciate your email, and again, I would love to have you as a customer. I'm just so tired and burnt out on having to deal with the fallout of MCY. I didn't do anything wrong except try to make a pretty yarn for a good price. So as the story continues, we're seeing more and more people get hurt as a result of Danielle's actions and inactions. This part of the story is really sad to me, because this person whose only crime, according to everything that I can find, was that she once worked for Danielle and happened to live in the same town, and she was potentially losing business as a result of not only MCY's mistakes, but also just these completely baseless accusations. I'm sure at the time, the people in the Ravelry board felt like this was a witch hunt trying to report and shoot down any obvious instances of MCY yarns popping up again, but thankfully the fallout didn't seem to be too intense after this. Another former employee posted about her experience working for Danielle, saying that she had tried to trick her into accepting yarn as a payment for work instead of money. Things were relatively quiet for the next few weeks, but on February 23rd, 2008, Corgi Hill Farm posts an email that she received from MCY. The email says, "Please understand that the family is doing everything that they can while Danielle is in the hospital. Due to the catastrophic effects of a debilitating illness, the company doing business as Mystical Creations Yarn has been forced to permanently shut down operation. It is with deep regret that there are no provisions in which to financially or physically process any outstanding orders in the professional manner MCY has served its customers over the past 5 years. Left is the remnants of an uninformed, devastated family making an attempt in good faith to try to fill outstanding orders with remaining inventory of equal or greater value. The family recognizes its inability to fulfill their obligations to both their customers and creditors in an accurate, timely manner and express their sincerest apologies for any hardship this may have caused. Please email us and we will try our best to answer your questions or concerns. My sister is trying her best to fill all the orders, and every order will be out this week of February 24th, 2008. I am sure that when Danielle gets out of the hospital, she will want to carry on her passion. If anyone would like to continue with her journey or send prayers, please email me and I will see that she gets them when she returns home. Dyeing yarn, as you can see, has been her passion for years, and I don't think she will give up on it if she comes out of this. Sincerely, the Family Mystical Creation Yarns. Thank you ever so much for shopping with us. Mystical Creation Yarns. First of all, this is like a nitpick, but is it Mystical Creations Yarn or Mystical Creation Yarns? Because they use both in this email, and I think I have been saying both, so maybe it is both, but I don't know. I thought it was Mystical Creation Yarns, but they did say Mystical Creations Yarn at the beginning, so I don't know. This is not really important. But apparently this was a mass email sent to everyone on their contact list, including people who had not ordered from them in years. People had been emailing to get refunds, and instead of any actual information, they were all receiving the same template email about her illness and hospitalization. Someone said that they had received the same email 4 times. Some of the emails were signed to Danielle and Zach Glunt, who is her husband, who is apparently also listed on the website as the owner of the company. Another small thing I want to add that's partially relevant just because people talked about it a lot in the thread, but some people pulled up court documents that Danielle and Zach Glunt got divorced in 2001, so that would be prior to MCY or any of this going on. But they had at least 2 children together, also found through some legal documentation that I'll talk about later. But his name pops up quite a few times throughout this story as well, so, not really important to speculate on her personal life too much, but it's just an interesting thing to add. Okay, so at this point, things start to pick up and move pretty quickly. So the next day, on February 24th, someone else posts an email that they said they had received at the beginning of the month. So the email said, "We are very sorry about the wrong shipment. We have gone out of business and there is no money to refund. We thought that it would be best that you at least get something for your money. We hope that you can enjoy what we have sent and thank you for all the years of business that you have brought to our company. Thank you ever so much for shopping with us, Mystical Creation Yarns." And then another post appears from a user in a group of New Mexico knitters. So this was posted on New Mexico knitters and then reposted to the Ravelry thread, which is where I have a screenshot of it. And this says, "Hi all. This is a difficult message to type as it is not good news. I have received an email stating that Danielle, the owner of MCY, is ill and not expected to recover. I pray that she does. In the meantime, her family is in overwhelm to say the least. They know nothing about the yarn business, so they have closed the website, eBay, and blog. As stated by her brother, she has a double garage filled with yarn and are attempting to fill past orders and sell the leftovers. I am unable to help as I live in PA, but if anyone lives near MCY and can help, please email mysticalcreationyarns@yahoo.com. Following these announcements of her illness and its apparent increasing severity, Danielle's web designer jumps on the forum and says, "I'm a web designer who's worked with Danielle since 2005. I don't know if it would be possible to verify the situation somehow, but as far as a timeline, I can say that I did communicate via email with someone who was signing emails as Danielle as recently as February 8th, and that I was asked by Danielle to take down her website because she was out of money. There was no mention of an illness or hospitalization. This was in response to an invoice from myself, which remains unpaid. And judging from the style/spelling of the message, I'm fairly sure it was her." Another user reports responding to the initial email that they were sent about the illness, and they had the following exchange. "I answered her email saying that I opened a dispute through PayPal and letting her know how to contact me through eBay or PayPal. She, or someone in her name, answered this. The family of MCY would like to make good with your dispute you have placed on PayPal. We have no money left to refund you, and we only have yarn left. Is there any yarn you would like that would make this up to you and close the dispute? Please let us know." So then the person responds and says, "I would like to ask you to make all these communications through PayPal. If you don't have any money to refund me, then I understand I've lost my money. And if you only have yarn for refund, what should I do? Trust in your word? Will you send me some wool to Spain without any cost for me?" And then they responded again and said, "Yes, with my own money. What kind of wool, worsted weight or sport weight? Dyed or undyed?" Respond with a list of the yarn bought and the money that they paid. And then they say, she has answered that she will send me to Spain on her cost the amount of yarn I ordered, but with different colors and maybe some undyed. I have accepted, but I've also told her that I'm not going to remove any of my disputes through eBay and PayPal if I don't receive anything. So at this point, people are obviously growing more and more suspicious. The emails say that the people handling the business while Danielle is sick have no experience with yarn, and yet the above emails indicate that there is at least some familiarity with yarn weights and what a customer's expectations might be, even, dyed and undyed, things like that. Several more businesses pop up that seem to possibly be associated with Danielle. One is Ina Maka, which is a business that she ran with her mom. Another popped up on March 2nd, 2008, called Margaret Hand Painted Yarns. A commenter says that the site says, dedicated to Danielle. We weren't able to find that page anywhere, but that seems like something that could be there. Apparently, several of the colorways contained the initials MCY. There's one called MCY Wild Gardens. So there we have this Margaret character popping up again. The next day, a poster shares an email thread with Danielle's brother, Mike. I told him, in response to the mass email, that I had opened a dispute and that I requested either the yarn I ordered or a refund. He emailed me back, asking for order specifics, order number, what I ordered, dates, etc. I provided the detail he requested, including the fact that my order was for some of their alpaca yarn. So there's kind of a back and forth here. I'm going to do two characters so that I don't have to keep reading all of the in-between. So I'll be Mike on this side and the poster on this side. We do not have any alpaca. Can I send something else? What else do you have? I found a small amount of alpaca, but it is undyed. Is that okay? How much alpaca are we talking about? Well, I do not work with yarn. I am just trying to help. I will send you what I found. Where should I send it? I found it odd that he was able to recognize alpaca by sight, but still claimed ignorance when I started asking for details of what he was promising to send. So I replied, you can send me whatever you like. I do not, however, agree that whatever you send me is a valid settlement of my dispute. If we reach an agreement, that's one thing, but you can't just check out when I start asking you for details. That's ridiculous. Look, my sister is dying in the hospital and I'm just doing this to help her. I don't know about yarns. Sorry. Please send me your address and I will send you the alpaca I found that is undyed. If you don't accept that, then I don't know what to tell you. Because I'm an idiot and because I have nothing to lose, having long considered the money I gave this outfit to be a total loss, I pressed my luck. I'm sorry, but I have to be honest with you. I don't believe you. In part because of your sister's long history of running businesses into the ground and then just starting new ones under different names. I also don't believe that though you can tell me you have undyed alpaca to send me, you can't weigh it to tell me how much you have. There are no scales around in the place where your sister conducts a yarn dyeing and selling business? If you want to seriously talk about making things right to settle my complaint, let's talk, but don't lie to me. My sister has no other complaints other than MCY. She has been in the hospital since December. No, there is no scale. I'm not going to argue with you, period. Just forget it now. I was only trying to help you get what you want. After a couple more exchanges, I agreed that he could send me the undyed alpaca. It will allegedly be mailed tomorrow. And if it was at least the amount I ordered, I would call it even. So I now expect to receive a box of smoky, smelling, lemon yellow boucle or something like that. I will most likely trash whatever I get and call my money a loss. It was under $50, so it could have been a lot worse. I know I'll be careful when ordering online in the future. I'm not saying that there are no good indie dyers out there. I'm sure there are many, and I've certainly seen much beautiful yarn for sale on Etsy and otherwise, but I am saying that I will be much more careful and diligent about ordering online, which I should have been in the first place. So it was becoming increasingly clear that people were tired of all the stories they were being told. So many of the details don't line up or make sense, and I think people were incredibly patient throughout the situation and did chalk up a lot to just a small business lacking professionalism or lacking resources, but at a certain point when people's money is involved, I'm a small business, oopsie, is just not a good enough excuse. A few days later, people in the Ravelry forum began suggesting that others file complaints with the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, and with the New Mexico Attorney General's office. One poster says, if someone ordered from MCY and was sent something bearing no resemblance to what they ordered, that's a bait and switch, which is illegal. The Attorney General's office can add that sort of transaction to the file as well. If they get enough complaints, they can make a case, especially if the business owner is faking her own illness or death to dodge customers. This poster says, I am in the process of filing a complaint with the New Mexico Attorney General and the Better Business Bureau. I'm afraid this is the only way anyone is going to get a bit of justice out this entire train wreck. This is the reason why I can't help keep reading this thread and the ones on the Lime and Violet board, because I hope somehow we get a bit of justice, or whatever you want to call it, out of this, because it's just plain wrong that MCY has been allowed to do this in the fiber industry. It sickens me that she has gotten away with doing this to so many people for so long just because she has a gorgeous yarn. As they say, you can't judge a book by its cover, and so you can't judge a yarn by its color. Here's another post from around this time. I've had no dealings with MCY, and I'm truly grateful for that. It was only the threads here that alerted me before I bought. That being said, I would strongly urge all those who've had a problem to at least file with the BBB. They are still selling yarn. They can't fill all the back orders and they can't refund any money, but they're still selling yarn. And now they won't even take a credit card. So you have to recompense if they screw you. These people have to be stopped. FYIW, I'm an oncology nurse. In my experience, assholes get cancer too. They do not magically become any less an asshole, they're just assholes with unfortunate health. Having cancer sucks, but it doesn't give you a free pass to neglect your business obligations or treat people the way this company has. I say sick 'em. Take them for all they're worth. Many of the mostly women that have been purchasing this yarn have been giving her the benefit of the doubt for years. They want to believe that she's a good person with good intentions because her yarn is gorgeous and affordable. And just from the pieces of the story that we have access to publicly, I have no way of knowing whether she had an ill intent to begin with. But again, if you receive someone's money for a product and then you don't, won't, or can't provide that product for them, it's your responsibility to refund them. Otherwise, it's literally a scam. No matter how much you may have not started the business with the intention of scamming people, that's a scam. I know businesses cost money, and especially a small business like this probably didn't have any kind of external funding or an emergency fund in case of something happening. But there were so many times prior to this alleged illness that she could have closed orders to catch up and go through stock or try to come up with some sort of resolution with the customers, but she didn't. It might seem callous that people are responding to someone being ill and having cancer or leukemia like this, but knowing the context of the whole story, I think it makes a lot of sense. So throughout this time, people were still receiving those same emails with similar information and wording, and people were requesting refunds through their bank and through PayPal. So by March 2nd, 2008, MCY had switched over to only check and money orders to avoid PayPal disputes. Also keep in mind, this means that they are still accepting orders. This is reminiscent of Danielle's May 2007 speaking out post where she told people that her business was overwhelmed, but then proceeded to offer a discount code for even more orders. The next day, on March 3rd, 2008, Claudine, Danielle's former European distributor, posts on the thread. So she says that she used to sell yarns for MCY. This has not been a great, by that I mean pleasant experience at all for me. I lost my reputation and took a massive loss during that time due to the eccentricities of Danielle. The only reason I opened a shop on Etsy to sell her yarns was that she, 1, told me that was okay, and my fault, I did not check, did not know the site, and 2, told me that she could keep up with the administration of it. Big mistake. Moreover, I had loads of problems with the quality of her yarns and her unreliability after a couple of months of operation, and, when complaining, got the same kind of rude, horrible responses you are all familiar with. I pride myself on good customer service and have a faithful base of customers in Europe. That's it for history. Let's get to the present. Danielle is not in hospital or dying of leukemia. I, for a fact, know that for certain. Now you can take my word for it or not, but if anyone is in the area, just go and visit. She'll be there. I think she meant to say she won't be there, as in like she won't be in the hospital. But also like she probably shouldn't have suggested that people go in person to find this internet yarn dyer. Like, let's not do that. Even for people that are like potentially scammers. This whole brother/sister thing is a total lie. Her only brother died some years back. Don't know of any sisters. I'm utterly disgusted and this is just sick. I personally do not have any grudges, believe it or not, as I moved on for the better. I just cannot stand people who use any means possible to get pity or defraud others. I may not be a dyer and therefore unworthy. I assemble wools coming from European mills to create yarns and sell hand-painted yarns which are created by real committed artists, not con men or women. There, that's it. Sorry, but could not keep quiet any longer. Just an extra clarification. I know for a fact she's not in hospital, as I'm in contact with someone who calls her at least once a week and knows her very well. So, Danielle's not in the hospital, she's not dying, and here's someone who has worked with her closely and can confirm that not only was she an asshole, but she's also alive and well now. And now once again, I will admit that I don't know everything about Ravelry, but this account had made 1,400 posts at the time of this comment, and there's strong evidence that this was actually Claudine. I just wanted to throw that out there because I think it's good to be skeptical of anything we see on the internet, but this does indeed seem like it's actually Claudine and she actually worked with Danielle. Her post is received not with shock and horror and surprise, but with a lot of people being like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That's sort of already what we thought. Which again, if this was like any other small business who was going through a tough time, I hope that people would respond more favorably. It just seems that Danielle's reputation had kind of preceded her and this was the end of the line. Apparently, around this time, people began calling hospitals in the New Mexico area to see if there was a Danielle Glunt in any of them. Here are some of the responses to that in the thread. Yeah, the hospital hunting and the mention and brief ridicule of her divorce and kids put me off for a bit. Outrage, offering solutions, and even calling for a tar and feathering all has its place, but the personal stuff is creepy. Not that I don't find this interested, I'm disgusted too and am fascinated with the details, but I'm wary of going too far. The wrath of the internet is not something to be taken lightly. It can ruin people. If she is guilty, as we've convinced ourselves here, then maybe she deserves all she gets. But if she's not, or we're not getting the full story, we've caused a heap of trouble for someone we don't even know. I agree with those saying to contact the Attorney General and BBB and any agency who will listen. Alert the unwary and assist in any process that will compensate her former customers and protect her future ones. Get the word out, but be careful about making it personal. I would also suggest that people not agree to a substitution when they can't get the yarn they ordered. You may think something is better than nothing, but it sounds like from these stories that that's not always true. Plus, you may lose your ability to claim real compensation if you negotiate. Another tactic if you receive a package from them is to refuse delivery. I know you can't tell if it's any good till you open it, but if you're really wary of the item and think you'll want a refund, it may be best not to gamble. Another person responds to this and says, Danielle made it personal when she sent out emails faking illness, trying to appeal to the sentiments of the people she has swindled. The details were not dug up to trash her character. It's already trashed. She took care of that with her lousy customer service. The details were dug up because this situation required some sleuthing. We were all wondering who the hell are these people? Danielle, Zach, Mike, Margaret emailing us, trying to take our money, and the money of people unaware of the scandal. Danielle continues to this day to try and scam people out of their money under false names. Calling the hospitals is relevant. Researching her in public records is important because she is still trying to steal and commit fraud. This isn't just an amusing thread. This is a valuable resource for everyone still trying to get their money back. Although I do agree that no one should go to her house because she is clearly crazy. While I agree that in like 99.9% of the times we see stuff on the internet and there's internet drama that we should protect people's privacy, I also completely understand people wanting to dig through Danielle's personal life and her records to try and get a picture of what was going on. I do think they also probably could and should have left some of the refund stuff to authorities, but I can also kind of see where they were coming from in this like really desperate move. I think the important thing to take away from this discussion that they were having is that if she was innocent, if she was actually sick in the hospital and dying, all of this would be completely inappropriate to do. And this is a situation where people had a lot of information and they had a lot of reason to believe that she was faking it due to like all of the evidence. But in the off chance that she wasn't faking it, how horrible would that be to have the family member that you were actually really upset about and they're in the hospital and they are dying and you have all these random people from ravelry.com calling the hospital trying to figure out if she's there. And there's reasons why I feel comfortable making this video now, which you'll know once I get to the end of the video. But I really think this is a reminder for all of us on the internet that like it's easy to find stuff out about people, but that doesn't always mean that we should, and we should be very careful about how we use it. The next week, commenters on the board began talking about an FBI I3 investigation surrounding MCY. Miss Violet, the very same one from Lime and Violet, posted, "Someone just contacted me about an I3 fraud investigation taking place around MCY, like the feds. I'm waiting for the info via email, but wanted to let people know that the authorities are definitely taking this seriously after the deluge of complaints. I wonder if this means that they know something about her lack of illness that we don't yet. Just wanted to reiterate that your voice totally counts." For those unfamiliar with an I3 report like I was, it stands for the Internet Crime Complaint Center and covers email compromise, elder fraud, ransomware, computer viruses, and cryptocurrency investment schemes, identity theft, non-payment or non-delivery of merchandise ordered online, credit card fraud, computer intrusions, corporate data breaches, and denial of service website attacks. Then the next day, on March 9th, 2008, Danielle is pronounced dead. This user received an email at 4:53 and 46 seconds that says, "I can hardly talk/write right now. I'm crying so hard. Mom just called from the hospital and Danielle has just passed away. I just want to say thank you to all of you that have showed your support, sent prayers, all of your kindness, and just being there for us. The family is going to need it. She has left behind a loving husband and 2 loving boys. Margaret." Margaret. Then a poster on the same day responds to this and says, "Oh, I can't keep out of it any longer. It's just too much. I kept saying to myself, there's a possibility that the story is true. She may really be dying, but that mail is just so unlikely. Imagine if a close family member of yours died. Would you jump straight on the internet and post messages about it to the customers of their business? Be on the internet at all, typing through tears? I don't think so. Later that same day, another poster says, "Odd that Danielle dies just as the FBI opens an investigation on her, and we all start filing complaints with the NM Attorney General and the BBB. Well, if she did die, you should be able to search for death notices in the local papers by Monday, Tuesday latest. The internet makes the world a very small place at times." Miss Violet also posted later that day saying, "I just noticed something. While I've gotten the last two, OMG, she's dying, buy our crap emails, the death notice email didn't come to me," which means that A, she knows about this post and knows who is vocal about not believing her, and B, she's only sending her own death notices to the sympathetic who might believe it and thus buy more of her crap yarn. I seriously don't buy a word of it. On Tuesday, March 11th, Claudine posted again, and she says, "I'm pleased to announce that your consciences are clear, unless my friend is hearing voices from the grave. She spoke on the phone today." She of course denies that Visionary Yarns is her shop. Furthermore, in reply to a previous post, the yarn sold by Yarntopia Treasures was called Visionary well before the Visionary Yarn shop appeared on the net. Who said anyone is stealing? Then a week later, on March 18th, Yarntopia Treasures comes back on again with some more stuff to say. She says, "Okay, I'm back for a quick few points since you said this is about MCY. Hopefully I won't upset others by continuing to post responses. Thank you for saying you like my yarn, I really appreciate that. I guess it is the way I write because I'm not trying to cover things up, I'm just trying to answer questions that pertain to me and my business. I will, however, try to address all the other ones that have come up in the last several minutes. Most of my time working for Danielle was only winding yarn, and if you can remember way back in the days when she used to dye it and then reskein it for photos, well, I did a lot of that. When I decided to try to change my eBay business that I had already established back in 2003 into strictly yarn, I had to do research and learn so much because I was not taught very much at that point. I did it through different areas in the community because there is so much art around here. I called companies that specialized, like Jacquard and Pro Chemicals, read all kinds of stuff on the internet about it, and then began to talk to my customers who were knitters and eventually was able to make the product a whole lot better by implementing some of their ideas. I can't take credit for when things were good with MCY because I wasn't even a dyer then, and I wasn't a dyer or working for things when things went bad either, so phew. Also, the being attacked thing was not referencing anyone right here, but more like those occasional emails I get through eBay and Etsy that are people yelling at me saying, "We know it's you, Danielle." I just turn them over to the abuse persons that handle that for the sites, but if you read one or two of those emails, you would agree that they are attacks. It's just a bummer to turn on your computer to that first thing in the morning before you even get the first cup of coffee down. In reference to the two other posts that I saw asking me who was there when I bought the yarn, Danielle was. I had already started buying yarn from her before I even saw any of this forum or even knew what was going on. All I did know was that she was going out of business. You probably want to know how recently I saw her. Less than a week. It's a small town. What can I say? You run into everyone at Walmart. So this is March 18th, 11 days after Danielle supposedly died. So as we close out March and get into April, you're probably wondering, like, what else could possibly be going on at this point? So Tammy from Yarntopia Treasures confirms that she has seen Danielle. Other people report seeing her with dye on her hands, and people on the Ravelry board are calling these zombie sightings. As we get into April, a new person appears on the Ravelry thread. The next part of the story is going to focus primarily on the dates of April 10th through April 14th. Also, I apologize, but I ran out of note cards, so you're just going to have to remember that we're in 2008, and there are two new important characters that are about to pop up, but don't worry, I'm going to say their names so many times that you would not be able to forget them if you tried. Also, I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not, but the first death notice that we saw was posted from Danielle's sister, Margaret. This will be important going forward. So this is the part of the story where the conversation and the drama moves like pretty exclusively to the Ravelry board. We're off of LiveJournal for the most part. Like, all of this is pretty contained to the Ravelry thread. There are so many back and forth interactions on the thread between the various characters that it's pretty hard to keep up. I'm going to summarize what happens between April 10th and 14th, but there are some more characters in there than I can mention, and there's some other interesting things to see and read. It's just overall like a pretty interesting read. So, on April 10th, the user Abracadabra20 posts on the Ravelry board for the first time. This is also super not suspiciously. This is their first post on Ravelry ever. Their account was created on March 28th, 2008, but this is their first post. So in their first post on the MCY board, they say that they have seen an obituary for Danielle in the paper, so she's dead. This post has since been deleted, so I'm not sure exactly what it said, but other users immediately jump on this. They ask Abracadabra for a link, which they cannot provide. And then other users are suspicious because when they search around for it, they can't find any obituaries with Danielle's name in it. Closest thing that people could find was Danielle listed as a survivor from someone's obituary like years ago, meaning that she would not have been dead, and that was years ago, so it's kind of irrelevant anyway. Someone says this was for her grandmother-in-law. So Abracadabra at first claims that they saw in the paper that Danielle was dead, but then they changed their story a little bit, or there was a miscommunication somewhere, and they say that they actually received an email with a copy of the obituary in it. There was no link, and Abracadabra can't remember the last name all of a sudden. So overall, a nice little chaotic entrance onto the scene. When people begin to push back on the fact that Abra is coming in here with no receipts and some pretty big claims, they get immediately defensive and change the subject, saying, "This forum is just an invasion of someone's life." And then they proceed to insult one commenter's appearance, who suggested that Abra look through some of the posts linked in the thread. This was basically like a highlight reel of the timeline that happened, so that people who were joining late could follow parts of the story without having to scroll through literally thousands of posts at this point. So this person says, "Well, you're new here. You should really check out the thread summary at the top of the page. I'm not buying a copy of an obit in an email." And then Abra says, "Well, someone that looks like you in your photo, I can see why, lol. You don't look very kind or loving. You look mean." And later on, Abracadabra claims that this was a joke, but if it was a joke, like, it's not a very good one. Also, even if this person is somehow not Danielle, they have come into the forum with really strange and defensive energy right off the bat. People are already skeptical, and then this person is just not doing themselves any favors. Also, all of their posts are like one sentence or a really short phrase, and people speculate later on that this might be a way to cover up any grammatical errors or like tone of voice in speaking. Also not super relevant, maybe, but when this user joined, their username was 3 wishes in a bottle. But before the day had ended, after their first post, they had already changed their name to Abracadabra20. Despite many people's assumptions that this was either Danielle or someone associated with MCY, several people were trying to acclimatize Abracadabra to the reasons why this lack of evidence was suspicious. People were still trying to be nice. One commenter reminded them several times to really read through all the important posts before jumping to conclusions. This same person also reiterates that the thread is well-sourced, well-researched, and has been the place of discussion for complaints to the Attorney General and potentially the FBI, though we haven't heard much talk of that since Danielle's death. Oh yeah, and apparently when Abra finally posts proof of the obituary, it's just a bunch of text copy and pasted from an email. Again, they deleted the actual post, but I'm inferring this from many responses, references, and quotes to and from it that paint a very thorough picture of what this obituary entails. Also, after I wrote that part, I did find the full text that someone else had reposted somewhere, and I didn't want to change the script because I wanted you to experience the excitement that I felt when I found this. So the alleged obituary that Abracadabra first said they looked up in the paper but then changed the story to say they received in an email reads as follows. "Danielle Mary, you never said goodbye. You were gone before I knew it, and it was in God's hands. A million times I needed you. A million times I cried if love alone could have saved you. You were so very young and kind-hearted. In life I loved you dearly, in death I love you still, in my heart you hold a place. No one will ever take your place. It broke my heart to lose you, but you didn't go alone, for part of me went with you, the day God took you home. With love and in memory of Danielle, love her family." It was later revealed that this text was posted on an obituary website under the name Danielle Mary Smoot in 2007. People were quick to point out that even if this text had been found in a paper, it doesn't really prove anything because it doesn't follow the normal, like, obituary format. If anything, it looks more like a memorial text, which is something that you would have to pay money to have posted. And if you were faking your death, that would be probably a pretty good way to make it seem legitimate. But it wasn't a normal obituary format where it was like, this person died this date, they lived in this area, they were survived by this many people. All of this I only know because of this video, by the way. Now I know what the format of an obituary looks like, but we'll see some of those later. So through all of this, Abracadabra keeps insisting that they can't believe Danielle would hurt anyone, apparently citing the fact that they have used her yarns in the past and she seemed nice. Also, this part of the thread is really funny to read because it goes between people posting in various different tones, responding to Abracadabra. People are actually trying to help them because people are seeing that, okay, maybe this person is just new to Ravelry and is just new to the thread and is very naive and doesn't understand how any of this works. So if it is just someone who's trying to join, we want to help them. So we're trying to keep reminding them, read the thread before posting in it. Try to get all the context before like throwing in your opinion based on absolutely nothing. Like, that's not what the thread is for. The thread is for people to talk about their actual experiences, talk about their complaints, and to seek legal action at this point if Danielle is in fact scamming people. So the thread goes back and forth between people like that talking to Abracadabra, and just so many posts of people being like, ugh, I can't stop reading this thing. I'm supposed to be getting ready for this with my husband, or I'm late to work, or I can't get away, or I left to go put something in the oven and now there's 500 new posts. Like, these people were hooked, and I'm so sorry, but pun intended, just this once. Also, a confusing thing, at this point, there are several different last names of Danielle floating around. I've already talked about Glunt, and we'll see Packard later on, but then a few others, Lucero and DiGiorgio. These are just names that people are coming out with, and I'm not sure exactly where they all came from. Finally, we move on to the next day, April 11th. For most of the day, there's nothing too notable, and yes, I did read through 300 plus posts in this day alone, but post 4,890 in the thread is very important. This person says, I feel a little guilty for having done this, but the results deserve to be shared. Being the sort of person who likes to have solid evidence before lobbing accusations of trolling and sock puppetry, since there was the chance that she really was just a hapless newbie who made an unfortunate choice of a first thread to post in, I sent Abracadabra20 a personal message welcoming her to Ravelry and offering to help if she had any questions about navigating the site. We exchanged a couple of messages, which included me asking her general whereabouts, and she said she was near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Unbeknownst to Kim, I included a single pixel image in one of my PMs in order to log her IP address. That IP address, 65.103.189.53, if anyone wants to check it for themselves, did not trace to anywhere near Pittsburgh. Guess what metro area it did trace to? Go on, guess. Now, I don't really understand how something like this works, and I don't feel like learning. This is just not something I need to know. But the important thing about knowing the IP address of the poster is that someone pretty quickly finds Margaret's IP address. Remember, this is Danielle's sister who sent out the death notice, and Margaret's IP address is the same. Guess what? I just taught myself how to get these IP numbers, and the email that I got from Margaret is from 65.103.189.53. We have a winner, a real winner. Oh my God. Now you can imagine that everyone in the thread is absolutely losing their minds. There are a lot of people who say they've been following the thread this whole time, like all of these posts, and this is the first thing that gets them to come out of their lurking and actually post in the thread. And one thing to note, later on this same day, one user posts some information about how IP addresses may not be perfect concrete proof. And to be honest, I just did not want to read through all that in depth to understand it. But I understand the point they're trying to make, so I will attempt to summarize what I've skimmed. Basically, there are a lot of different things that go into determining an IP address, and that the location found might not match up with a user's exact location, because it might also be connected to where a provider is or where the mail domain is. So everybody who uses yahoo.com might have the same IP address. This post is in the 5100s if you want to read it or explain any of these things in the comments to me, but I don't want to know. I've learned too much for this video and I don't want to know about IP addresses. But the important thing to note here is that while having the same IP address doesn't necessarily hold up as completely infallible evidence, it's certainly a strange coincidence that Abracadabra, who claims to live in Pennsylvania, actually has the same IP address as Margaret, and they're both located in New Mexico, the place where Danielle was last seen alive. Also, something that's not necessarily that important, but you might be wondering what Miss Violet is doing through all of this. She was getting an appendectomy, and so she hasn't been posting in the thread, but she must have made an announcement about this and people know this? I don't know. People just keep bringing her up and being like, man, she would have loved this. And I was like, what happened to her? I don't know. And then finally I saw someone say, oh, she got an appendectomy, so she's not here. I don't know. So the thread is relatively quiet for over the next few days, as in nothing too groundbreaking happens, but people are still posting hundreds of comments about related, tangentially related, and completely unrelated things. The one notable thing that does happen, though, is that Abracadabra comes back to respond to some comments, and they mostly seem shocked that the things MCY is doing and has been accused of are considered criminal actions. One poster says, "I'm hoping that she's arrested and that everyone affected gets their money back by midsummer. And I'm really hoping some scrappy reporter picks up this story and runs with it." And then Abracadabra responds saying, "Arrested for what? Closing down a business and sending out bad yarn. I never knew that could be a crime. Business close every day." Again, whether this is Danielle or actually is this Kim Leonard person, as they claim to be, they're entering this thread in bad faith and willfully ignoring the order of events that have been laid out. In response to this post, several people once again point out that Abracadabra should read the important posts in the thread, and others say that the business closing is not the problem, it's the potential fraud. And to this, Abracadabra responds saying, "From what I understood, they did what they could with no employees and no help." And let me remind you once again that small businesses get overwhelmed. Many of them don't have enough hands to fulfill the orders as quickly as they planned or hoped, especially if things blow up out of their projections. But this was not the central problem here. MCY did not, in fact, do what they could. They were given so many chances, and people were pretty patient for a long time. 3 to 4 weeks is a long time to wait for something, but not an unreasonable time, especially if they had been upfront with the wait times. I bet customers would have waited up to 6 weeks. But everyone is rightly shocked and confused that this new poster to the forum, who's just popped up out of nowhere, is defending Danielle seemingly so blindly. Another thing that I haven't mentioned in my summary up to this point is that this Abracadabra person was apparently in direct contact with Margaret. And so when someone would push back on something that Abracadabra said, there were several times when they would respond and say, "Well, Margaret told me this," or "Margaret said this in an email." Other posters, understandably, became increasingly frustrated over this and started demanding that Abracadabra asked Margaret to come into the Ravelry board herself and answer the questions once and for all. They also say that if Abracadabra is in such direct contact with Margaret, then they should tell Margaret to answer other people's emails, because people have been waiting on responses for days and weeks, and apparently Abracadabra is just emailing back and forth with this person who is not reachable by anybody else. One other thing to note is that on April 13th, someone posts a theory that Danielle might actually be sick because she might have accidentally poisoned herself with the yarn dyes. The poster theorizes that because Danielle's business practices were lax and she was not careful about setting the dyes, then it's possible she was careless in other aspects of the dyeing process and she may have been affected by the heavy metals and chemicals in the dyes. They compare this to some of the problems that Van Gogh seemed to have had. To me, this is a little bit of a stretch. Just because someone is disorganized and has bad business practices doesn't mean that they wouldn't know the dangers of chemicals in the yarn dyeing process. But maybe. Who knows? It's definitely not outside of the realm of possibility. Also on April 13th, in a lovely moment of foreshadowing, Caryatid posts again letting us know that she has personal message with Abracadabra. Abra asked her what she wanted to know from Margaret, and Carrie responded saying any answers that Margaret can give. So Carrie says, "I think there are some customers who would like to speak to Margaret in the MCY forum. These customers are unhappy with their yarns and have been unable to get refunds from MCY. In fact, many of them have not received any response to their complaints, which is why they took their grievances to a public forum. Margaret can simply click reply to thread at the bottom corner of the screen to introduce herself to the group in general. A lot of people are going to be very interested to see what she has to say regarding the business." Within minutes, Abracadabra20 responded to that by saying that she had sent Margaret an email over an hour ago. My response: "Well, I wouldn't worry about the thread disappearing anytime soon. It's not likely to end until there's some sort of resolution to the federal investigation and the results are publicly known." Abracadabra personal messages Katie again the next day, wondering if she has heard from Margaret, and then Katie responds, Kari responds, oh my god, what are these people's names? Caryatid responds, "Why in the world would she contact me?" Also, in case you didn't read the thread, Invisible Insanity, the moderator, corrected my assumption. It is, in fact, against the Ravelry guidelines to loan your account to someone else. My apologies. Oh, because people were trying to ask Abracadabra to give their login information to Margaret, because I think some of the pushback was that, you couldn't create an account and then immediately start posting somewhere. I don't really understand. I don't know if there was a problem creating an account. You had to wait to be verified or something. And so people were suggesting that Abracadabra just give their login information to Margaret because everyone was assuming that it was just the same person. But apparently that was against Ravelry's terms of service. So the message continues. "If you are, as you say, in touch with Margaret or Danielle or whoever it is, and this person actually wants to speak to their customers like a responsible business person, she could contact Casey and ask to be bumped to the top of the queue for an invitation to Ravelry. So I'm seeing Casey mentioned a lot, and I just couldn't figure out who this was. I don't know if this is like the person in charge of Ravelry or something like that. That's my assumption. And then Abracadabra does not respond to Caryatid's email, but instead they post in the forum saying, so then they are refunding people. So then, finally, on April 14th, in the midst of a random conversation about weird/bad baby names, which is somehow not the first time that this happened on the board, we get a new poster in the thread whose username is MCY Yarns, aka Mystical Creation Yarns. They say, "Hello everyone, I'm here to set the story straight. There are too many rumors coming from this site. The business is closed and will remain closed. We are in the process of refunding customers. I hope that is all you want to know. Thank you, MCY." People obviously want to know if it's Danielle. And if it's not Danielle, then who is it and what their intentions are. So Beth B says, "Okay, I'll bite. Are you Danielle?" And MCY Yarns responds, "No, and why does it matter? I am here to help and set all the rumors straight." Someone else responds to Beth B and says, in a sarcastic tone, "Oh no, Beth, that can't be Danielle. Danielle died on March 9th. Someone asks who MCY Yarns is, and if it's like a relative or someone else, and they respond by saying, "I am the helper. Capital T, capital H. I'm a family member that has helped to close down the business." So for 2 pages, basically everyone just ignores them and carries on with their own conversations. Someone does respond to their post, though, with some legitimate complaints about the yarn, and MCY responds to them saying, "Sorry you were not impressed. Nobody is perfect." Nobody is perfect? Nobody's perfect? That's... What an insane way to respond to legitimate criticism about your business. That's an acceptable excuse or response maybe if you have a typo somewhere, if you made one little mistake, if you had one bad interaction with a customer and you're like, "I'm so sorry, we're just overwhelmed," and like, "Nobody's perfect, we're doing our best." Nobody's perfect is not an adequate response to, like, at the very least, just like having horrible communication skills with your customers, and at the most, scamming people. They continue to try and shift blame and defend themselves, saying, "I do not know about dyeing yarn, so I cannot help you with that. She had 4 dyers that all used a lot of dye when they died. They did not do a very good job. This was the start of the downfall of the business. I have had many people say that they soaked the yarn in a tub of water till the dye came out. The yarn was fine after that." Huh? "Sorry about the lack of trust. When the business closed, there was no one to dye for the orders. So we had no choice at that time but to send out what was in inventory. We were not trying to scam anyone. Everyone left, so there was no other choice." The thing about this argument, though, is that if they weren't trying to scam anyone, then why were there all of these different reincarnations under different names with Danielle's yarn colorways and all of this stuff that they were trying to sell to people? Later that day, there's also the first mentions of refunds from MCY in the thread. When someone asks why they didn't refund people, they say, "There was no money left in the business. It had gone under. We have been starting to refund people, as many as we can." And people say the obvious choice would have been to just immediately refund people. And then MCY Yarns responds saying, "How come you can't understand there was no money left?" And then this user, Synaptic Impulse, says there was no bankruptcy filed. So how are we supposed to know that there was no money left? MCY Yarn responds and says, "This is private information." And then another user says, "Sorry, bankruptcy filings are public record." I think this is a really important point to point out because they said repeatedly that they had run out of money, there was no money to refund people, and the business had gone under, but the business never filed for bankruptcy, and there was no evidence that it was going to. If MCY had been a smaller or like sole proprietor business, then again, people maybe would have been a little bit more sympathetic to the fact that they did not understand how to do this, but Danielle had prided herself in having employees, being like a pretty large business. She had distributors in Europe, and again, multiple employees. So she at least understood how to do certain parts of the business. And if there truly was no money left, then they should have filed for bankruptcy because that's a way to get yourself out of this situation. You don't have to die. And one final location change. We're back to the apartment. have the board here, and this is just the end of the story. On May 1st, Danielle is once again spotted, this time depositing checks at the bank. So Maggie says, though it looks as if this particular MCY persona has snuck back into the dungeon, I thought I would de-lurk long enough to try to help the helper. I thought the helper should know that a woman claiming to be Danielle Glunt, presenting Danielle Glunt's driver's license with an address on Futures Road as a proof of ID, was seen and overheard today depositing checks at a neighborhood branch bank. She was driving a brand new car with dealer stickers and tags still on it, I might add. And no, helper, I am not a defrauded customer of MCY. I am, however, a fellow resident of Edgewood, New Mexico with the misfortune to also be named Margaret. Need I mention how much your nefarious business scams have cost my business? Including the cost of renting a post office box in Sandia Park? So this is just my way of saying thank you, helper, for all you've done for me. And throughout all of this, MCY Yarns keeps posting, just basically saying like, what do you guys want? We're trying our best. Like, what else can we do for you? Like, we already did everything possible. Like, what do you guys want? Why are you still talking about us? Here's one post where they say, what more do you want? We have closed the business. We have refunded everyone. What else can be done to stop this mess? Now we have people emailing us in support over all of this. This is a copy of one of them. And then they copy an email that they got that was like supporting them. So the subject line is, terrible snarkiness on boards at you, : not okay. I just want to say I looked at a thread because I didn't know what the topic meant. I've never ordered from you and therefore I have no problem at all. I just want to tell you I'm really appalled at the snarkiness that I've seen directed at you in posts here on Ravelry, and to reassure you that all knitters/ravelers are not out to flame people and destroy businesses. That behavior is not okay, as I say to my children. I really believe that any post that begins with the letters WTF should probably not be posted. I don't know what to say really, except to say, hang in there, and I hope that you can be surrounded by supportive people instead of all this negativity that I've seen on the boards here. Have a good day. All I'm trying to do is put an end at all of this gossip. We have helped everyone that we could. What more do you want us to do? And that's pretty much it. It seems like people got the refunds that they wanted, the people that reached out, and there's really nothing much else on the board. There's no updates about the lawsuits, at least not on the Ravelry board. Basically, the final update that we have was posted on December 29th, 2009. This poster says, about a month ago, I answered a Craigslist ad of a woman's that was selling pro-chem dyes, and it turns out it was one of Danielle's neighbors who had moved from New Mexico to Oklahoma. She said she was getting out of the business and had some other equipment to sell as well. She also had some yarns, but I didn't get a chance to see them. I just had to ask who she dyed for then, right? She said she was recruited to do dyeing for MCY and that Danielle had her doing a lot, supposedly 20 to 30 pounds a day. So I don't know much about yarn dyeing, but that seems like a lot of yarn to do in one day. Personally, I can't imagine even doing like a pound of yarn. Like I don't have the skill, so I don't really understand. But 20 to 30 pounds seems like a lot. If you are a yarn dyer, let me know like what a normal amount might be. Even just like using my common sense, I feel like that's a lot. She was embarrassed to say who she had worked for and that it was completely false about any of the illness or anything. So more confirmation that all of this stuff was not true. And that she had been interviewed by the FBI. I also figured out that one of the reasons that the wool yarn was not holding the dye was that the pH was not correct. I asked if she had any citric acid to sell, and she said that they never used it. This woman was only using soda ash no matter what fiber she dyed, so the acidity with any of the wools that she dyed was incorrect, thus the dye release. My brush with internet fame. So this person confirms a lot of the things that we wanted to know, why the dye wasn't setting. And this gives us another look at how the employees were treated, which was like, not well. And that's it. Even though there were no more updates, people were still posting in the thread all the way up till April 2012, where we reached the final post 14,129, that just says, cattails are my favorite, ... This group of crafters had found a place to discuss, snark, investigate, scheme, and most of all, just to talk. In the years following the 2008 MCY controversy, the thread was alive and well with people posting news of them starting their own yarn businesses, birth announcements, project updates, plans to meet in person at events like the famous Rhinebeck, and general encouragement and goodwill. All this makes me realize is that maybe the real MCY is the friends that we made along the way. And by we, I mean the knitters of 15 years ago. One thing I want to briefly touch on is a little bit about privacy and people's right to privacy on the internet. While I do think that people that choose to be public-facing personas are entitled to their right to privacy, as soon as their business begins engaging in potentially, allegedly illegal criminal actions, it makes sense that people will start to dig into their personal life. People were not receiving refunds or sufficient responses, and they were given reason to believe that this business owner had faked their death to get out of making things right with them. And just the authorities were not moving fast enough, so it makes sense that people took things into their own hands and felt like they needed to put on the detective hat. People sort of had mixed opinions on this in the thread. Someone said, that's not an invasion of privacy because it's on the internet, and this person responds saying, I must admit to seeing gray areas on this point. Just my personal squigginess? I don't know that word. But a person doing business on the internet should expect to be virtually checked out the same as I expect my brick and mortar customers to check me out. There's a big difference between intruding upon a private life just for the voyeuristic pleasure of it and trying to find out if a business person who screwed you and then claimed default by death has actually died. And I think that makes sense. People love a bandwagon and they love to jump to conclusions, but I think there is a little bit of a lesson to be learned here. Successful small business owners have to be a lot of things. They are often expected to sacrifice free time, their health, and so much for their business. And I can only assume that Danielle was doing all of those things to make her business a success. Despite all of these mistakes, customers were still buying their yarn. They wanted to give this small business the benefit of the doubt for as long as they possibly could. Customers repeatedly begged for transparency in this situation. They wanted answers, they wanted the yarn they ordered, or they wanted their refunds if that wasn't possible. And the only reason that this story went on for as long as it did is because people kept giving her chances over and over again. Here's a post from Miss Violet in February 2008, where people were discussing about whether this is a forgivable offense of just maybe being lazy or just too overwhelmed. And in response, she says, I can see what you're saying about the laziness versus overwhelm thing. For most normal people, I think that would be true. But we are dealing with someone who has proven time and time again that she's dishonest and possibly delusional. To offer a product without any quality control is laziness. To ignore customers who have been burned by their purchases is laziness. To blame every single problem on some outside force instead of taking responsibility for her own actions is laziness. She's established a pattern. It's not all that surprising that she's continuing that pattern as she closes down businesses, air quotes, because she's not shutting down. She's getting rid of the negative PR and will probably open again under a new name if she hasn't already. It's her established modus operandi. And that just is it's her established mode of operating. And whether Danielle was really sick at the time isn't even the crux of the problem. The product quality, the fake siblings, fake death, inability to give refunds, general lack of transparency, numerous businesses popping up, and disregard of her customers created this frenzy that could have been avoided if they just told the truth. Did some of this go too far? Probably. Maybe. But at the same time, people on the internet have gone further for less. And yeah, there's not really a nice, neat wrap-up to the story. We're left with a lot of unanswered questions like, did people actually get their money back? Did Danielle go start a new business with a new name? What happened with the FBI investigation? Was she actually sick at the time? Was Danielle herself actually playing all of the parts behind the scenes? Margaret, Zach, Mike, Abracadabra, MCY yarns, or did she actually have multiple helpers? The very final piece of the story is that Danielle Margaret Packard passed away on January 14th, 2014. According to her obituary, she lost her long battle with cancer. Danielle loved life and she was a very kind person. She will be missed by all. She was married to Zachary Glunt. They divorced in 2001 and then she remarried and that's when she got the name Packard. Danielle's mother, Joy, who helped her start the business, and her stepfather, Anthony, have also since passed away in 2019 and 2020. So in conclusion, these people were not very good scammers if they were trying to scam, and they were bad business people if they were not trying to scam. Also, this online mob mentality drama tornado thing is not new. There's been online drama, and people have been using whatever platforms they have available to them to discuss it. If you lived through this and or were a poster on the Ravelry board, then please let me know what your experience of the situation was like. You can leave a comment or you can email me at emmainthemoment.channel@gmail.com. And let me know if I left out any important details. There was obviously a lot to go through. If I find out anything super interesting or revolutionary after posting, I may make a short follow-up video, but I kind of imagine that because it's been so long, this story has sort of just faded into the background, and I kind of have given you everything that we know. This is the longest video I have ever made, and it took a lot of research and time to make it. So if you like it, then like the video, subscribe to my channel. My goal is to have 1 million subscribers by next week, so subscribe if you want to help me with that. I also have a Patreon where I release exclusive content, podcast episodes, and weekly blog updates of what I'm working on. There's also a Discord, so if you want to chat with me, I'll make a drama tag section. I don't know how to use Discord. I'll make a little thing where it's channel. I think it's called channel, where you like do the hashtag and then whatever. So if you're one of my patrons and you have any other drama you want to talk about, or if you want to discuss this video, then please join me over there. And thank you again to my researcher, Goblin Garments. And thank you to anybody who sent in a research assistant application. I actually was already working with this person before I even spoke about it in the video. I wasn't really calling for applications, but I didn't make that super clear. But in the event that I need to hire anybody in the future, I have saved all of those emails. We'll go back to them and start from there. So really, thank you so much for everyone who sent a resume or a writing sample. I'm so impressed with all of you. Like, I have such smart subscribers. I wish I could hire all of you. But once I take over YouTube and get 1 million subscribers next week, then maybe I will have the money to hire you all. So it's in your best interest to join to join. Okay, that's it. I've talked for long enough. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.